Can you guys hear me okay on this mic in the back? All my bells and whistles queued up. This is the clip. Cool. So who was in the class that I spoke to last year? You were. Oh, good. You're excited. That's good. That's a good sign, guys. You were. So some of it will be a little repetitive, but you guys also had some great speakers in the weeks prior, right? The good food, or good, what was it? Good food movie, right? Which I wish I would have known about. I would have loved to hear them talk. They're like heroes of mine, so that's pretty cool. And then you also read Omnivore's Dilemma, most of you? Yeah? You can't hear me? How about that? Is that better? We'll work on this a little bit. Can you hear me now? Okay. So you've been doing a lot of good reading and kind of jumping into the issue of food systems and culture. And I will do my best to bring you what I know today. But you can ask questions along the way. And yeah, you can get started. So finding our roots, because really agriculture, food is about culture. Food is like everything in our culture if we really think about it. It's our health, it's our wellness, it's our economy, it's our social connections with each other, it's our environmental connections, it's our connection to the land. It's pretty important stuff. So I like to call this finding our roots. What are these up here? Sheep. And why would I have a picture? I usually don't lead with this, but I thought it's about culture, so and the food system, what is my food culture? I grew up laying in this pasture looking at these sheep. So I grew up on a small-scale sheep farm in Kitsap County, and then part-time in Tacoma, so I kind of have that city, country, cousin country thing going on. And then I married a farmer, which is a whole other story. So I have this past, present, and future in agriculture. So right now I'm with Cascade Harvest Coalition, and they're an awesome nonprofit out of Seattle. And we work on connecting consumers more directly with their farmers and their food. And we work on connecting farmers with tools and resources they need to be more profitable and more sustainable. We also provide information to consumers basically about anything that's going on in the Puget Sound that we hear about and just disseminate our knowledge out. And I'll talk about our programs a little bit later. So we all eat. Food is at the very base of the pyramid of our needs as people, right? We have breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, and other stuff. Okay. So it's really the basis of who we are. And it's also, like I said, it's an agricultural act. Every time we eat, who ate breakfast this morning? Most of us. I'm kind of guilty. I didn't do a good job with breakfast, but every time we eat, we make a choice. We make a choice about who our farmers are, what we're supporting, how we're taking care of the land, how we're taking care of our bodies and each other. It's really important. So Wendell Berry, which is another great author, kind of like the former Merkel, he's like the guy that started all this, and he has a great book about agriculture and culture, food and culture. Anyway, he's also coming to Seattle on May 24th. I'm so excited. But he said that one might begin with eliminating the principle of Sir Albert Howard's The Soil and Health, that we should understand the whole problem of health in soil, plant, animal, and man as one great subject. So all those things are connected. Eaters must understand that eating takes place inescapably in the world, but it's inescapably an agricultural act, and how we eat determines to a considerable extent how the world is used. So we have this rich history of growing food, especially in Pierce County and throughout the Puget Sound, all up and down the I-5 corridor, where all those warehouses are. It's like some of the best farmland in the world that used to be under there. And we still have some of that farmland. We were the hops capital in the world here in Pierce County in the early 1900s. We're still the rhubarb capital of the world. We have amazing fresh vegetables. We have seafood. We have the largest egg producer in the Western Washington area. What else? And we had this great victory garden movement that happened in the 1940s too in Tacoma. We knew how to grow our own food. My grandparents had a victory garden in the back. They grew everything. They couldn't afford not to. So it was pretty important. And we're moving back in that direction. What is a food system? How did the food get to your plate? There's a lot of steps and a lot of people in between, and often there's a lot of distance. We really want to close that distance and keep those resources as close to home as possible. There's production, there's processing, how do we access food, how do we eat food, and then also the waste management aspect of it, what happens to what we don't eat, and so on. Okay, so local food is it's so in right now. And some of you who have seen this before, you've seen my Walmart examples. The McDonald's campaign, the billboards that are popping up all over. Served in Ballard, grown in Richland. And if you went to McDonald's website to find the local products, that website was only for Washington State, because we had people throughout the nation, we had friends that would check it out, and it was back to Washington. So it wasn't regional throughout the United States, it was Washington, because Washington grows amazing products. We have all the apples, we have amazing dairy, we have a huge wheat production, so a lot of those commodities, but also a lot of small scale fresh stuff as well. And then there's a great video online for the White House garden planting that happened just a couple weeks ago. That was pretty cool, with Michelle Obama and some kids planting a garden and explaining to them the whole way that everything works. And you can also go to Frito-Lay now and you can track your chip and find out where your potato chip came from. So, yeah, you can, I meant to load that one up, but I don't have it loaded actually. But yeah, there's a little number on the bag, and it's supposed to show you what farm it came from. So that's nice, it's good traceability, but yeah. And then USDA has done a great job with the Know Your Farm, Know Your Food campaign, so it's coming down from the national level. And I got to meet the deputy director of USDA the other day. It was awesome. Kathleen Marion, she came into town to talk about food hubs and how do we relocalize how we get our food, and she's a pretty cool lady, so that was really neat. So that billboard, we replaced it with that billboard. I'll try not to be too repetitive for my presentation last time, but I thought, I'm going to get McDonald's somehow. How do I do it? So we put up our own billboard for how people can find local products, and I'll share some of those resources later. So 100 years and growing. Then that's you can't see it very well, but it's a postcard of a farmer with strawberries from the Peel Valley that are this big. It was kind of a joke in the 1900s. Okay, so where does our food come from? We hear watersheds a lot, when it rains, what happens to the water, where does it go? It goes to the Puget Sound. Where does our food come from? And we've looked at, we've heard maybe the 100-mile diet. Could you eat within 100 miles? What does that actually entail? What does that get you on your plate? If we ate within 100 miles of Tacoma, it'd just about be within that red circle. So you can still get stuff from Yakima. You'd have a decent variety. But in winter, it'd be kind of tough, because in winter it's spring in Chile, and that's when all the nice blueberries and all that stuff comes up to the grocery stores. I'm from California as well. Another idea of what is local, this is a graphic, for instance, in Pierce County. It varies between, what you can afford, of course, what season it is, where you're at, what the product is. But if you're trying to go really local, grow yourself. Then, maybe there's a farmer next to you. And in the Puget Sound area, maybe it's 100 miles, maybe it's Washington State, Pacific Northwest. What if we just ate within, the United States, what came from the country? It would make a big difference. And why would it make a big difference? Is because we are what we eat. Literally in this picture. Yeah, I'm a tomato here. It was for a community garden tour that we did in Tacoma to promote the community garden tour. So we went down to the farmers markets and we scared a lot of kids and dogs. We got a lot of people at the garden tour, and we still do those, and that program is booming. So I'll talk about that in a second too. So some health stats. We have almost a third of our population in Pierce County, and over a third actually are overweight, but almost a third are obese, considered obese. 10% of children are obese, an additional 16 are overweight. 55% of residents eat fast food. I'm guilty too. I mean, like I said, breakfast was not that great for me this morning. Pierce County adults earning less than $15,000 a year have obesity rates 70% higher than those earning more than $75,000 a year. Something's happening in the food system there that shouldn't be. And all those costs of having that healthcare problem, they trickle down too. So when we think of, we want cheap food, and we need cheap food, we need affordable food, but what costs are we paying in the long run if we're not paying for real, whole food in the beginning? And this is where it might get choppy, but the CDC put together a map of obesity rates and how they've changed throughout the nation over time. And let's see. So that's 1985, 86, and you can see there's two categories, under 10% and 10 to 14% in the blue categories. '89 and 91 they added a new category. So 15 to 19% of the populations of those states are considered overweight, obese, or overweight. New category, 20%. Oh, new category, so 25% population in that state. You can see it spread too, it's kind of interesting. 30% new category. Oh, we'll be okay for it, we'll be okay. There's good stuff too. Wrong button. Let's see if I can start this show. Okay, great. Time check. Good to go. Okay, so environment. Now this is where my knowledge comes in a little bit more is, you know, all of it, it's rooted in the soil, really. Our soil is our biggest asset in this world because how else are we going to grow our food? And so farmland is so very important for many reasons, but especially because you can't just make those soils. And you can do hydroponics and you can do other things, but you can't replace and you can't build topsoil that's been lost. So in Pierce County, anyway, and this is, you know, relatively similar, especially throughout the I-5 corridor where development has really hit. We had 170,000 acres farmed in 1945. And now in the 2007 Ag Census, which is what the USDA, they do all their stats, we had 47,000 that was still being farmed in Pierce County. That's a pretty big difference. And it's not like we have less people than we did now. We have more, right? So something's going on there. Where are we getting our food to feed our populations? Environment and open space also come into play when you talk about farmland. You talk about habitat, you talk about areas where water can recharge when the rain falls. Is it falling on pavement or is it falling back into the ground and recharging those aquifers? That's a big issue. And also, you know, we live here because it's a beautiful place. And do you want to live next to, you know, a housing development, or would you rather live, you know, or have at least that separation between the urban and the rural, so it's not just a bunch of urban sprawl? No offense to the South Hill, I lived there for a while. It's great. I grew up partly there too. So we don't necessarily need to create those environments if we just plant well. And then we also have an aging farmer population that kind of feeds into that. The average age is 57 years old. So that's not a lot of young farmers, but we have some awesome trends starting. We have a lot of young women farmers coming up, and we have a lot of minority, immigrant, and refugee farmers coming in, and folks that know how to grow things. And we also have a lot of kind of folks who are looking at a second career. And I run the program that helps people get back into farming, and so I'll explain that a little bit later too. We of course have carbon footprint issues when we look, you know, at environmental impacts of food production. Are we transporting food all over the globe? What's happening with that? And soil. Talk about about that briefly, talk a little bit more. So David Montgomery was actually a local Seattle guy, and he won like the Genius Award. He's a pretty cool dude. He said a civilization can persist only as long as it retains enough productive soil to feed its people. The landscape's soil budget is like a family budget with income, expenses, and savings. You can live off your savings for only so long before you run out of money. You all kind of know about that one. So I'll show you just how much soil we have. There's not a lot of development in Antarctica, but it's pretty hard to grow stuff there. So I just saw a special on it the other night. So, and it takes about 500 years to make 1 inch of topsoil. I mean, this is pretty precious stuff. And we go in there, and my dad's actually a master builder, so it's cool because it probably, development helped put me through school too, and we have to have a balance between, what we do for a career. But we can't just go in there and just strip it off. No, topsoil for soil, or topsoil for sale is not that easy because you can't recreate it that quickly. So and like I said, we have some of the best soil in the world. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like chocolate out there in the Puyallup Valley. It's very cool. But we face some big challenges in agriculture: land development, high land prices. Water rights are becoming more and more of an issue. There's a thing on, how precious water is this morning and how we're almost onto that crisis. And obviously some places in the world are already experiencing huge water shortage. And then we have these global retail markets. And there was actually a really good talk on NPR with a professor from UPS this morning about global agricultural markets, and you probably should have had her come and speak. She would blow your mind with all these things that they were talking about, and how the price of soybeans or the price of corn and how it all comes together and really affects the cost of our food here. And we've already seen some spikes in the food costs, but it's all connected. So, how do we get our food? 500,000 people live within half a mile of a convenience store. Almost 300,000 people live within half a mile of a grocery store. And about 35,000 people live within half a mile of a farmer's market. So that's cool. And we have a lot of community gardens like just booming right now, and it's awesome. So right now we have about 38, and there's probably more in development. And there's a Tacoma community garden program, and there's gardening programs up in Seattle and throughout the Puget Sound region that are really working to get people back growing in urban spaces, to revitalize those communities, to create those connections, and to get people affordable, fresh food. But at the same time, 40% of people are accessing, emergency food services. 54% of infants born in Pierce County are served by WIC. And I just heard today that they're going to cut the budget. The federal budget was $4 million that they were going to cut for WIC. And that's like your prime development years for your children. You want them to have, some kind of nutrition. That's pretty sad. And then Pierce County saw a 40% increase in the number of families that were participating in the food stamp program. And then we did a couple years ago, we put together these maps looking at income, obesity, and where food outlets were. So was it fast food? Was it convenience store, grocery store? And you can kind of see how these dots follow the main roads of in Pierce County and Tacoma area here. And we didn't get much of the information outlining. So Bonnie Lake does have grocery stores, and Gig Harbor too, but the lighter color is the lower income areas. So it's kind of interesting because you can chart food deserts. Where do people not have access to fresh food? The grocery stores are the red dots. So you can see kind of between Fife and Puyallup there's kind of a good gap. There's another good gap out. What is that? Off of 16 and 5 South Tacoma. But there's a new farmer's market as of a couple of years. That's pretty cool. And then these are all the restaurants and convenience stores. So the options there, of course, sometimes you get good options, but not always. There's Line, Pacific, and Meridian, and South Tacoma. And then Seattle did a study in the Sound Food Report, which is a really awesome report. They talked about everything in there. Really smart people put it together. And you can see kind of the lighter colors of where there aren't as, there's not as good of access to grocery stores. And they did convenience stores, same deal. But in the middle, it's a little hard there in South Seattle to get fresh food sometimes. Good news, farmers markets are booming. We had the new South Tacoma market go in, Stillcom came in Pierce County. There's a new market going in Olympia. There's probably a couple in the Seattle area. Anyway, a 16% increase from 2009 to 2010 in farmers markets. And if you look at 1994, it was just under 2,000 markets nationwide. Now it's 6,000, so it's just going up. The only problem is we have to be careful about how we build farmers markets because there's only so many people willing to go and shop there. So think if everyone of those, for instance, 34,000 people that live half a mile within a market in Pierce County just spent $5 every week. $5. What a big difference that would be in the local economy, in farmers' pockets, and in your meals too. And how much do we spend on food? We spend a ton on food, $1 billion. And then I found this Seattle study here. This came out of the Sound Food Report. 16, that's a lot of zeros. What is that? Million, billion, is it 16 billion or trillion? Yeah, that's a lot of money. So what if we just captured like 2% of that with local farms, local food? What if we captured 5 or 10? Anyway, just little percentages can make all the difference. Food and beverage. I think that's probably, I don't know. It's not a supermarket, it's not a convenience store. Could be. They have warehouse down there too, warehouse club. I can ask the guys next time I see him. So what happens when we spend our money locally? Sustainable Seattle did a report in 2007 that said for every $100 spent at the grocery store, 25 goes back into the local economy. And for every 100 spent at a farmer's market, 62 goes back into the local economy. And 62 goes back and 99 stays within the state. We want to keep our money here in our own pockets. We love the people in Chile and in New Zealand and in China that we trade with for our food. That's great, and I'm sure that we're supporting farmers there that need the money, but we got to support our own people and our own farmers and keep our food affordable. So how do we do this? How do we build a stronger food system? Well, we have to probably change our habits, and it's not always easy. You don't have to do it overnight, but little by little, the little steps we can take can make a huge difference. We have to learn a little bit more about what we're buying, what we're putting in our bodies, how it was made, who's behind it. Money is always helpful. We always use more money to help do these things. We need to get people to learn how to grow food again and get their hands dirty. And farming is not easy work. It really sucks sometimes. To be honest, it's very hard, but it's very rewarding. And you guys doing all the research you're doing and learning and taking care of of that next generation of whatever it is you're going to do. And it can, once again, food does impact most professions in some way. You can take part in that. Okay, so let me check my time because I'm getting a little long-winded. I accidentally just hung up on my husband there. Okay, 24. So what does Cascade Harvest Coalition do? We, once again, we connect consumers and we help farmers find those resources they need. We put on this great website called Puget Sound Fresh, and that's a good place to find products. Let me see if I can get it here. So when you go to Puget Sound Fresh, you say, I want to find a farm. Oh. You can say, find a farm near you. You can say, I live in King County. And here's all my farms on the Google map. What's the one by Bellevue? Let's see, Bill Pace Fruit and Produce. So you can do that, or you can also find, say like I would like, well, let's do something easy here. I would like sweet corn in Skagit County. Here's the farms. It's pretty cool. So not every farm is listed on here, but it's pretty good. We have a pretty good listing here throughout the whole county. It's the Puget Sound region, so just the ones that border the Puget Sound, the counties that border the Puget Sound. Snohomish. I want carrots. There's all the farms that'll have carrots in Snohomish for you. Yes, yeah. And so how much time do we have left? Okay. So let me see. You could ask. Why don't you ask questions as they come?
I have a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
You were stating that your organization helps local farmers connect with resources. What do you mean by that?
I mean, and I'll explain a little bit more, but say someone's looking for, who do I talk to about getting into a farmer's market? Who do I talk to about working on, I need infrastructure to process my carrots to get to a school. How do I make those connections? And we kind of move people in the right direction, get them hooked up with experts. We also work on, sometimes we'll work on policy and infrastructure projects, and it's kind of wonky how I'm saying it, but I guess getting them information they need, getting them to the right people. If it's regulations, we get them to the right people. We work on the marketing, like I showed you, the Puget Sound Fresh, because that way people can find their products. Does that help answer your question?
And do the local farmers, do they feel it's advantageous for them to sell their product locally versus being able to get a better price somewhere else?
Well, it's kind of a couple questions there, really.
Yeah.
So first of all, are you big enough to sell to a bigger market? Like, are you going to be big enough to get into Safeway? That's not many people around here are anymore. But we do have some of those in Pierce County. We have Richter and Storino Farms, for instance, that do celery and peppers and rhubarb, and they do get into Safeways. And Wilcox gets into Costco's and Walmart's and the bigger guys. But then you have small farms, maybe anywhere from 1 to 40 acres, and they're not necessarily going to have enough volume to get into those markets, so they want to get that direct pricing, probably direct with the consumer as possible. So it is advantageous, but it's really hard to break into those markets. And there's several ways, like for instance, you could sell your produce at a farmer's market is one that we commonly hear of. You can do this in a community supported agriculture operation, which means you buy, the consumer, the eater, buys a subscription into that farm. And so then maybe whatever the terms are, say it's 20 weeks throughout the summer, which is pretty normal, you get a box of fresh produce from that farm. But the farm already got the money ahead of time, so they have a stable funding base throughout the season, and then you know you're going to get these vegetables. And maybe you don't get everything you thought you would because maybe it hailed in June and they lost the spinach crop or whatever it is. But you make that agreement. So that's another way. Now people are looking at how do they make small sales into like the co-op, like the Tacoma co-op is starting up pretty soon. The Olympia Food Co-op is always, they're working with 20-some plus farmers to get products in. How do you work with restaurants to get those, especially seasonal products, in the back door and make those connections? Smaller retailers, and now people are looking at farm to school. So how do they get those products to, maybe it's one snack that kids have each day, it's an apple or a carrot snack or a fresh salad bar, or it's locally raised meat that they can get into some part of the meal at a school. That's a pretty big deal. And other institutions like hospitals, and there's so many opportunities. And that's, for instance, what we do with the farm to table that we work on, is how to get that product from the farm to the table, and who are the players, and where are the potential markets, and how do you as a farmer make those connections, and how do you as a buyer, a food buyer, because there's a huge food service industry, how do you find those products that people are like clamoring for, like people are asking for these, now you have to make that happen. Sorry, long-winded. I think you were first, actually.
I have two quick questions. First one is, I know that in the past, Tacoma, y'all got rapidly changed over because the tax rates were not paying the farmers. They were taxing them on potential which just pays a lot of farmers right now. They don't have to pay.
They did put in agricultural zoning, but that was, it has pros and cons on the farmer, the way farmers look at it sometimes. If you had your farm and you thought you were going to sell out to a developer potentially and make money on that property as a commercially zoned property, or as a property that could take more development than the agricultural land allows, then that wasn't favored. But some people, I mean, obviously it's a decent thing if you want to preserve farmland because you're keeping that land in, hopefully in perpetuity. And the taxes do, I believe, change on that. I don't know. That was from the Seattle Times. But if you went online, they will have all that information, whether it be, is it probably DSHS, Health and Social Services, and yeah.
Yeah, do the farmers pay belong to COVID? Is there a sliding scale depending on size of farm, or how does?
To support these programs, there is a membership fee. I think it's $50 a year for farmers. We're not very stringent on that. We also have grants, but for the Puget Sound Fresh Guide, there's a beautiful paper guide that we put together, the farm guide. It has all the farms in it, and it's actually coming to the office today, so I don't have copies for you. But that we make farmers, we have to have farmers pay into that to support that. And I think it's pretty low. It's for the paper guide, I think it's $200 a year, which is a lot for some farmers. For online, I think it's $50. But otherwise, we work off of grants, which hopefully are safe today. I haven't checked, but WSDA administers grants, and their budget's also on the chopping block. It's horrible. They do really good things. That's the State Department of Agriculture, and then we get grants from the USDA, from the feds. So, and then private grants as well. Do you have any questions? There might be on the website if you look on your EBT website, but at the same time, I know for senior farmers market vouchers and for, I believe for WIC too, they have farm stands that are approved in Pierce County anyway. And then if you go to farmers markets, they should have, most of them now have the card readers, and that's pretty cool. And we're working for the last 5-10 years to get more technology so that people can just swipe cards at a farmer's market. I know that I think Tacoma has them, Proctor has them, so that's cool. And in Seattle, they're doing a big project on that too.
I'm wondering about like on a Safeway recently, they were saying they have a farmer's market.
Yeah.
They don't. But I was wondering, do you guys look at that as well, or is that part of your reference group? I mean,
Like Safeway and big
well,
retailers?
yeah, Safeway was claiming they had a farmer's market going on, yet when they were asked, where'd you get the food? It was
Yeah.
all affiliated.
Well, and Albertsons was doing that like last December, and I called Jesse at the the King 5 investigators. And he was busy, I think he was sick or something, but I mean, after that, look what we produced, and I'm like, well, yeah, there's nothing in the fields anywhere in Washington right now. What are you talking about? California, maybe, but anyway. We don't go like, we don't really attack people for that stuff, but our main thing is to really work with folks who want to make the change. So, like Whole Foods wants to get as many local products as they can, and we're working with them to get, there's a bunch of really icky, like ball of hair kind of safety regulations and food safety things that have to be done for small farmers to get products into retail. And so we're working on with that project to help streamline those things and make them possible. Through my husband's business, we work with like Food Services of America to get local products into from the farm into institutions, restaurants, whatnot. Different distributors and larger retailers like Walmart, and I skimmed over that. They're doing like this big global initiative, which we'll see how that actually pans out. And there's a lot of bad things about Walmart, but think of the power they would have to make a difference if they really focused on regional supply. That would be huge. The only problem is they have to pay people a decent price. They don't always do that. Costco has done a really good job of trying to pay a decent price and also get good products. So it's not, I think there's really a place for every part of the level, every part of the chain to make a difference.
Excuse me,
Yeah, sorry.
it's always me when people use negatives, okay? And I'm from the old school. I tell you that we use the powerful word as change. It means change means whatever. You can afford vegetables, you can afford meat, you can afford rice, you can afford beef. What happens is that this marketing that we are so sucked up into wants to have fast food, pizza, chips, Doritos. You can go ahead and buy that with rice and vegetables to feed your family. So the change that you're talking about is a two-edged sword when you look at it. When you start with it, there's people that they might not be able to change the way they eat. But we have to look at it with a positive that says you can make a difference. You can make a difference. Even at the school, here you have families feeding with kids to eat like $3 and something cents a day. So they don't need to give the kids $3 worth of anything. Go ahead and buy some wheat bread, put some tuna, with apples. That's a whole lot less than it would be to feed them. It's all knowing what your body needs. And then you get away from what you choose.
Yeah, we just went to a, how are we on time? We're about done. Just help me. We just went, my husband and I just went to this food service buyers conference. So University Food Service, the guys who are making the decisions to feed, university students. And I don't know if we don't have a cafeteria here, but they are basically being courted by the companies there and given resources to make those choices. So Jenny-O Turkey was there, Hormel Sausage, Kraft and Nestle, the biggest food corporations in the world, and they did this speed dating thing where they would get the buyers and then they would demonstrate the products, and it was all about, the whole thing was convenience and price. And I need the convenience as much as the next guy, but some of the selling points were really horrendous, and so we really need to look at the messaging that they were throwing out there. I was like, how can I, what are the big trends the food companies see? For instance, turkey burger is huge, and how can we then use that to empower, better food at a local level for people?
Your organization is sort of a network of connecting local farmers with consumers, correct? So the question that I ask is, where's the incentive for consumers who are in the lower income bracket? Because that's one of the things that I've learned this quarter is that a lot of the junk foods and things that is because they're cheaper. And so people who are at a lower income level are opting for that because it's really all they can afford. So the question is, what kind of incentives do you guys offer that would encourage people with lower incomes to buy more local organic foods?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't have, there's only 3 of us, and we are all like part-time, except for my executive director, who's awesome all the time. But we're not able to make like a special targeted program for, like you're asking. But what we do is, like, for instance, the projects to work with farmers markets to get EBT into the farmers markets.
Well, the other thing I was going to ask was, are you guys working with like nonprofit agencies that do food donations?
Yeah,
Get
at
those kinds of
times.
food?
Well, and so there's the resource part. Like, for instance, there's great partners that we work with on occasion, especially for policy things, like Harvest for Hunger. They have a huge, gleaning and food donation program throughout the Puget Sound, and we work with them at the state level for food policy. So what are policies that we can make it easier for farmers to donate food, or that we can make it easier for people to get their, whatever that is, and then also we work with immigrant and refugee farmers to help those populations get on land to actually farm, and we work with partners who do that. We're kind of a hub, information hub, and then there's a lot of great projects that are going on throughout the region to do that very thing, and the community gardens is another good example. We don't work with gardens as much now, but in my last couple of months, and I'm on the Tacoma Community Garden Program Committee. That's really focusing on food justice and going into communities, especially underserved communities, and helping people build gardens if they want and grow their own.
I got to need for soil in terms of how do you get about hydroponics and alternatives?
I actually don't know much about it. I know that other countries are really, like Canada, we get all their peppers and their cucumbers. I know that Iceland grows a ton of their food through greenhouses and hydroponics. Netherlands, it's like if you fly over outside of Amsterdam, it's lit up with those greenhouses. It's fantastic. But I don't know a ton about it. My focus has been on how do you keep the soil in place first of all, and then go from there. So, I think it's a great idea. You can utilize it. And you've seen like those, like in New York or something, they would have the mini gardens that you grow yourself in your windowsill, and all hydroponic. Very cool stuff is happening.
Are you part of the Wilcox dairy family?
Yeah, and no longer dairy, it's only eggs now. But I just,
So how do you put the soil together with dairy operations?
well, that would be, the soil comes into your milk. How does soil affect your milk? Well, because you need good pasture. Hopefully you're grazing those animals on pasture, and you need really good pasture. You need good nutrients in your soils to build that pasture. Or you need your soil to grow your grain if you're finishing your cows on grain, but really they shouldn't be eating much grain. So yeah, it's all in there. It's the base of everything. But now, for instance, with eggs, we're working on getting grains as locally as possible and looking at other alternatives to just corn. So looking at peas and other legumes and beans, looking at triticale, which is a cross between wheat and rye. Anything with protein really that we can get into the birds that potentially can grow on the west side of Washington, but in Washington or within the Pacific Northwest.
So as a follow-up, so where are those crops being grown? Talking about
What do you mean? Like,
So talking about maintaining the soil
yeah.
and for your family, where do you get those?
A lot of-
Where do you source
A lot of them come out of Washington State because we have so much wonderful grain production. Some will come from the Midwest. None are coming from China anymore, especially after the military stuff. You couldn't trust a truckload or a trainload of grain anymore. Any other questions? What am I missing that you guys want to know? There's so many more resources. I think we're about out of time. I am not, but they are our partner, and they actually house the community garden program here in Tacoma. So thank you guys very much.